Why does every great civilization independently invented the same horror of human sacrifice?
In 1967, a crew building an airport in southern Mexico hit something solid, 3 meters down. They'd cracked open a Maya cistern sealed for 1,000 years. Inside were the bones of 64 children. For nearly 60 years, the story we told ourselves about those bones was wrong. We only proved it last year. And what we found instead changes how we should think, not about ancient people, but about ourselves. For most of the 20th century, the public image of Maya sacrifice came from one place, the sacred cenote, the deep natural well at Chichén Itzá. Starting in 1904, an American explorer named Edward Thompson dredged that well and pulled up skeletons. Newspapers ran with what he found. National Geographic specials repeated it. Textbooks repeated it. The story was vivid. The Maya, we were told, threw young women, virgins, into the well to please the rain god. Indiana Jones repeated it. By the time you and I were in school, that was the story. The Chultun, found in 1967, was different. It was 300 meters from the Great Pyramid. It had been sealed, and it sat barely studied for half a century while archaeologists argued about who exactly the Maya had been killing. In June of 2024, a team led by a researcher named Rodrigo Barquera at the Max Planck Institute published the answer in the journal Nature. They had extracted DNA from all 64 sets of remains. Every single one was male. Many were closely related to one another. There were brothers, there were cousins, and there were 2 pairs of identical twins. Bone chemistry showed the related boys had eaten the same diets. They had grown up in the same households, possibly raised for what was going to happen to them. Radiocarbon dating showed the killings had taken place on regular cycles, over a span of 400 years. The pieces snapped into place. The Maya weren't sacrificing virgin girls. They were sacrificing brothers and twins, in deliberate repeating cycles, to mirror the hero twins, the boys at the center of the Maya creation story, who descend into the underworld and are killed and reborn again and again. What happened in that cistern at Chichén Itzá wasn't random. It was a ritual reenactment. The children weren't victims found at hand. They were cast. For 60 years, we had the genre wrong. We thought we were reading horror. We were reading liturgy. That distinction matters. A society that kills people occasionally, in panic, looks one way. A society that breeds, raises, and ritually slaughters its own to keep the cosmos turning looks like something else entirely. And as we'll see, what Chichén Itzá actually looks like, that second thing, is closer to the rule than the exception in the ancient world. Step back from the Yucatan and look at the planet. 3,000 years before the Maya were dropping twins into Chultuns, on the other side of the world, the Shang Dynasty in what is now central China was running a sacrificial system on a scale that's hard to take in. At the royal capital of Yingshu, near modern Anyang, archaeologists have cataloged more than 13,000 sacrificial victims spread across 200 years. The remains sit in roughly 2,500 pits surrounding the royal cemetery. One ritual recorded on the oracle bones, the inscribed turtle shells the Shang used to communicate with their gods, killed 339 people in a single ceremony. A single tomb, designated M1001, contained 73 skulls in its access ramps and 59 headless bodies arranged below them. Recent isotope analysis tells us something colder still. The victims at Yinshu weren't killed quickly after capture. They were held for years, fed a controlled, mostly vegetarian diet, then ritually executed. The Shang state was running what amounted to a sacrificial pipeline. Some of their military campaigns appear to have been launched specifically to refill it. Now go 3,000 miles southwest, to the coast of North Africa. The Carthaginians built one of the great cities of the ancient world, bigger than Athens, richer for centuries than Rome. And at a sacred precinct called the Tophet, they were ritually killing their own infants. For most of the 20th century, the academic consensus tried to wave this away as anti-Carthaginian propaganda from Greek and Roman writers. In 2014, a team at Oxford, led by Josephine Quinn, pulled together all the evidence: the burial urns, the inscriptions on those urns, the dental analysis, the literary record, and concluded the dismissal was wrong. The inscriptions on the urns were dedicatory, not funerary. The age distribution of the dead children didn't match natural infant mortality. The The bones of sacrificed lambs and goats sat in the same urns as the infants. Conservative estimate, about 25 children every year for centuries in a city of 500,000.
Quinn went further. She suggested Carthage may have been founded specifically to keep the practice alive, that the Phoenicians who insisted on sacrificing their children had been pushed out of their original homeland in modern Lebanon by neighbors who couldn't stomach it. A city, founded so a ritual could continue. Now move to Polynesia. The Hawaiians did it. The Fijians did it. The Maori did it. Captain Cook's officers watched it happen. In 2016, a team led by Joseph Watts at the University of Auckland published a study in Nature looking at 93 traditional Austronesian societies, the cultural family that stretches from Madagascar to Easter Island to New Zealand. Of the highly stratified societies, 2/3 practiced ritual human sacrifice. Of the most egalitarian ones, only a quarter did. The pattern wasn't subtle. And keep going. The Aztecs cut the hearts out of captives at the top of the Templo Mayor. In northern Mexico, a 2024 DNA study at the site of Paquime confirmed elite-controlled child sacrifice paired with elite inbreeding to keep the bloodlines closed. The Inca froze children alive on Andean peaks, the Capacocha, children who had been ritually fed for a year before being taken up the mountain to die. Celtic societies in pre-Roman Britain and Gaul left their victims in bogs, garroted, throats cut, skulls broken, the bog bodies of Lindo Man and Toland Man. The Norse sacrificed at Uppsala. The early Hebrews are recorded in their own scripture as having done it. That's why Leviticus and Jeremiah rage against it. The valley where it happened in Jerusalem, the Valley of Hinnom, gave us the word Gehenna. The Greeks remember doing it in their myths. The Romans buried Vestal virgins alive when their cosmic order felt threatened. These societies had nothing in common. They didn't trade ideas. Most didn't know each other existed. They were separated by oceans, by millennia, by language families with no shared roots. And they all converged on the same technology. That convergence is the fact that has to be explained. When unconnected populations independently arrive at the same complex behavior, biologists call it convergent evolution. The way wings appeared separately in birds, bats, and insects. It tells you something about the shape of the problem the trait is solving. So, if dozens of unconnected human societies on every inhabited continent independently invented ritual murder, what was it solving for them? The Watts paper actually did the math. Using a method borrowed from evolutionary biology, the team built family trees of how those 93 Austronesian societies had changed over time. Then, they tested the direction of cause and effect. Did sacrifice come first and then hierarchy? Or did hierarchy come first and then sacrifice? The answer was clear. Sacrifice didn't initiate stratification, but once a society had become stratified, the practice of human sacrifice stabilized that hierarchy and pushed it toward becoming strictly hereditary. Sacrifice was the technology that locked inequality in place. And when you actually look at who got killed, the pattern repeats across every culture we've discussed. The victims were almost always low status: slaves, captives, foreigners, the children of subordinate clans. The people doing the killing were almost always at the top: priests, chiefs, kings, claiming to act on behalf of the gods. The ritual did three things at once. It taught the powerless to fear the powerful. It taught the powerful that they had cosmic permission to do what they were already doing. And it taught everyone watching that the social order they lived in wasn't accidental or negotiable or even human. It was sacred. That's why the practice scales with hierarchy, not with technology or population or wealth. Sacrifice isn't a function of how primitive a society is. It's a function of how much inequality the elite needs to justify. There are dissenting views. The historian Peter Turchin has argued that sacrifice may actually have made these societies less stable in the long run, that god-king regimes built on terror tend to collapse harder than ones built on legitimacy. He's probably right that it carried costs, but the costs took generations to compound. The benefits to the people doing the sacrificing, the priests, the kings, the small ruling class, those came immediately. They came as obedience, as tribute, as an unchallenged right to rule. That's a trade most people in power, in any era, will take. Which is why nearly every advanced civilization that didn't already have the practice ended up inventing it. The function it performed was too useful for someone with power not to reach for it. And here's the part that should make us pause. Sacrifice tends to disappear from a society for one of two reasons.
Either an outside power conquers and bans it, the Romans in Carthage, the Spanish in Mesoamerica, Christian missionaries in Polynesia, or a universalizing moral religion takes hold from inside, one that says all humans matter cosmically, and you cannot kill some of them to stabilize the rest. Buddhism, after the Shang, the Hebrew prophets in the Levant, Christianity in the Roman world, Islam from Arabia outward. Notice what's not on that list. No society has ever simply outgrown human sacrifice on its own. Nobody got smart enough, or modern enough, or rational enough that the practice stopped making sense. It always took something from outside the system, either force or a moral revolution, to break the cycle. So here's the elephant. If human sacrifice was a technology, if it performed a specific social function in nearly every advanced civilization that ever existed, what makes us so confident the function went away? I want to be careful here. I am not saying modern societies practice human sacrifice. We don't. The literal practice, taking a person, declaring it sacred, ritually killing them in front of a watching crowd, that is genuinely gone from the developed world, and that's a real moral achievement worth keeping. What I'm asking is different. The function the ritual performed, legitimating elite authority, demonstrating cosmic order, terrorizing the lower orders into compliance, providing a public spectacle that turned the existing hierarchy into something inevitable. Does any of that look familiar? Consider public executions in early modern Europe. They were enormous civic events. Tens of thousands attended. The condemned was paraded, displayed, and killed in carefully ritualized stages by an authorized representative of the state. We don't call that human sacrifice. The dead don't know the difference. Consider the gladiatorial games of Rome, an entire civilization that organized leisure around ritualized killing as civic spectacle. Consider the show trials of the 20th century, in which states under every ideological banner staged the public destruction of enemies of the people in front of cameras. Consider the way every modern nation, of every political stripe, sends its young, disproportionately its poorer and rural young, to die in wars defined by people who will not themselves go. The dead are honored. They're called the fallen. They're called sacrifices. The word is still in our language because the function is still in our societies. None of this is unique to one culture or one century or one ideology. It's structural. The cross-cultural consistency of ancient sacrifice tells us something about what large groups of humans, given hierarchy and an authority structure, repeatedly do. Put enough of us together, give us a priesthood, secular or otherwise, and we will produce a class willing to ritually harm the powerless, and a population willing to call it necessary. That's the uncomfortable read. Civilization, looked at honestly, isn't the absence of this. It's the elaboration of more sophisticated justifications for it. The Shang priests said the gods demanded the Chang die. The Carthaginians said Baal demanded the infant. The Maya said the hero twins demanded the boys. Today, our justifications are economic, ideological, technocratic, geopolitical. The form changes. The function, ritualized harm, legitimized by authority, performed by a small, specialized class, accepted by a public that has been taught it is necessary, does not. Come back for a moment to those 64 boys in the cistern at Chichén Itzá. They didn't die because the Maya were savages. They died because at a certain scale of human social organization, every civilization we have evidence for reached for the same kind of ordered, ritualized violence to hold itself together. Every continent, every era, every type of government, every flavor of God. Ours is one of those civilizations. And the elephant in the room isn't what they did 1,500 years ago. The elephant is what part of the function we're still performing, under different names, in cleaner clothes, with the cameras pointed somewhere else. The question isn't whether they were like us. The question is whether we're still like them.